สวัสดีค่ะขอต้อนรับเข้าสู่การอบรมครูผู้สอนภาษาอังกฤษซึ่งสำหรับในชุดนี้นะคะมีทั้งหมด6ตอนด้วยกันเป็นชื่อชุด Unlocking Learners Voices ซึ่งจัดโดยมูลนิธิการศึกษาทางไกลผ่านดาวเทียมร่วมกับบริษัท TOT จำกัดมหาชนสถานทูตสหรัฐประจำกรุงเทพและก็สถานกงสุลสหรัฐประจำเชียงใหม่สำหรับในวันนี้นะคะเป็นพิธีเปิดนะคะ Welcome you all to the Videoconferencing English Language Teacher Training Program under the title Unlocking Learners' Voices, which is part 2. We have had part 1 called Unlocking Learners' Potentials. There are 6 sessions in this series, and before we start our first session today, I would like to invite Mr. Yongyut Watanasin, Acting Vice President of TOT Public Company Limited, to give remarks to our participants.
Thank you. Mr. Kwankaew Wacharothai, Grand Chamberlain and Chairman of the Distance Learning Foundation, Mr. Nevin, United States Consulate Generation, Mr. Ficho the Academy of Education of America, Dr. Martin Anderson, Simon Sanchez, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to join with you on today. It's the opening ceremony of the Distance Video Conferencing Training Program for English teachers. As part of the corporate social responsibility, TOT is pleased to provide expertise in the telecommunication network in order to help promote the Distance Learning Foundation education program, which will benefit not only the teacher but also the student and the Thai education as the whole. I wish you on the benefit from this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yongyut. May I now invite Mr. Paul Neville, the U.S. Consulate General of Chiang Mai, to give remarks, please, Mr. Neville.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for everyone involved, Kun Yongyut. I want to recognize the key partners for this program. This is an excellent opportunity for participants to engage in the DVC series for teacher training nationwide. And I want to recognize those who are part of the long-term collaboration of program partners, including DLF and TOT and the regional language office in the U.S. Embassy. For this DVC series running from January to March 2012, the U.S. Consulate, the American corners here at Chiang Mai University, Education USA, TESOL Northern are all cooperating to make sure that this program is a success for the teachers that are engaged in this program from 6. The skill of learning and teaching English is increasingly important in today's interconnected world. And in Southeast Asia, as ASEAN moves to a more integrated regional community where English will be the main language of communication. I also want to note that the Ministry of Education has promoted this year, 2012, as a year promoting English learning and training. And it is my pleasure to be here to see the opening of this special opportunity for teachers to learn English and to promote this special skill in Thailand and throughout the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neville. May I now have the honor to invite Mr. Kwankaew Wacharothai, the Grand Chamberlain and the Chairman of the Distance Learning Foundation, to give an opening speech. Please.
Mr. Yongyut Wattanasin, Acting Vice President of TOT, Mr. Paul Neal, U.S. Consulate General, Sutichok Lin Prasad, Counselor, the Academy for Education, USA, Dr. Marty Anderson, and all teacher participants. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all again to the Distant Video Conference Teacher Training Program for English Teachers on Unlocking Learners' Voices. This is another collaboration between the Distant Learning Foundation and the Regional English Language Office of the U.S. Embassy, with generous support of TOT Public Company Limited and Wang Klai Kang Won School, American Corner Chiang Mai, and Thai Tesong. I would like to extend my appreciation to all parties concerned regarding the determination and effort in making this program possible. Thanks to Dr. Marty Anderson and Ajahn Sharon Sanchez regarding academic contribution. My thanks also go to the staff of TOT and DLF Wahin for their technical support. I hope the teacher participants find the program useful and adaptable to your teaching. May I now declare the Distant Video Conference Teacher Training Program on Unlocking Learners' Voices open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwan Keo. Before I ask Dr. Marty Anderson to start the session, I'd like to say hello to Kun Koson Somjinda, the President of AUA Korat, Nakhon Ratchasima. We are now connecting with two more sites, Chiang Mai and Nakhon Ratchasima. So welcome you all on board. Thank you. Please, Miss. Yes.
All right. Let's see if the microphone is working. Okay? Not yet? Yes, okay. Okay. Good morning, Sawadee-ka. Happy New Year. Welcome back. It is a lot of fun for me to see so many familiar faces and some new ones. Also, I'm very delighted to be working with additional sites. This makes such a dynamic process. It's difficult to explain to people. I spent some time in the USA this summer, and I tried to explain what we were doing and how this worked. And people are quite amazed, actually, that we have this sophistication with technology and are able to reach different sites all at the same time is very wonderful. So today's session, you'll see I use the title Unlocking Students' Voices, and we're also using the title Unlocking Learners' Voices. Of course, learners and students are the same things. It's just when we call somebody a learner, we're emphasizing that that's part of their human capacity. In fact, we're all learners, even when we're not students. Every day we're learning something new. It's part of what we do as human beings. So today, what do we mean when we talk about unlock students' voices or unlock learners' voices? Well, we all know what a lock is, right? And usually we have a key to keep something secure, to close something and keep it inside, keep it safe maybe, where nobody can touch it or nobody can come in. That's when something is locked. When something is unlocked, we're talking about opening and making something possible. If I think when somebody comes to visit my house, if I unlock the door, I'm saying, come in. Yes, I want to see you. I want to hear you. I want to speak with you. I want to know what you think. And so this follows on the session that began in the fall before all of the scary times of flooding. And at that time, we were talking about student potential, learner potential, the idea that our learners, if they're little children, if they're old, if they're adults, they have incredible potential for learning. They are created, in fact, to learn. That is part of our, you might consider it our birthright, is to be a learner. When we talk about unlocking learners' voices, saying we want to open the door for what our learners are thinking and what they can say. We use the word voice to mean not just what you're hearing coming out of my mouth right now. Yes, that's voice. But there's also voice in the written form. We talk about an author having a very special kind of voice, or a poet might have a certain kind of voice. It's like almost like their individual style. So if we think about, many of you came to sessions in the past where we were looking at critical thinking, or perhaps you saw them on the television. This is very closely related to critical thinking skills when we say we want to unlock learners' voices. It really means we want to hear what they have to say, and we want them to feel like they have a way to express what they think. So it's really about learners' opinions. It's about learners' perspective, what they see when they look around them in the world. And it's to unlock or to make possible to hear all of those things. Why is it important to hear our learners' voices? I don't know. What do you think? Why do you think it's important? Would anybody like to offer a thought? I know it's early. Everybody's still a little bit shy. But is there some brave person who can say, why is it important to hear our learners' voices? Can you turn the microphone, please? Thank you.
Because we can understand from the voice and the things that we exchange from speaking.
Yeah.
Is very important.
Creates the possibility of exchange. That's right. And as we move into the new era of thinking about education, increasingly we want to be the person as teacher who helps to find out what our learners are thinking. We have education, we're teachers. On some level, what we think is important, but what our students think is what we try to achieve as teachers. Do you think you want to do just a little summary of that? Sorry.
Thank you. ค่ะ ก็อาจารย์นาทีนะคะก็เริ่มด้วยชื่อของตอนของเรานะคะชื่อของชุดอบรมชุดนี้นะคะ Unlocking Learners' Voices นะคะซึ่งอาจารย์ก็บอกว่าLearners' Voice เนี่ยสำคัญนะคะก็คือเราควรจะทราบว่านักเรียนเนี่ยคิดอะไรอยู่นะคะค่ะ
Okay, ขอบคุณค่ะ Thank you. As before, those of you who've been with us for a long time know that increasingly in these sessions we're doing less translation and more brief summaries like Ajahn Naraporn just did, because we're trying to encourage everybody to continue to work in English. So we'll be doing summaries from time to time, but not constantly. All right. So this session, before I get into session 1, I want to refer here to the whiteboard, because I understand when I wrote this up, people were a little bit confused. So let me just walk over to the whiteboard. This is just pointing out that we have 6 sessions. The first 3 are conducted by me. The second 3 will be conducted by Ajahn Shea, who you remember from before. The arrow is indicating that after today's session, which is focusing on writing personal opinion, on this date, February 17th, more than a month from now, Ajahn Shea will be asking for examples that come from this session. So that gives you more than a month to try to have some examples from your classes. And I'm sure that somebody from DLF will send out reminders so that you cannot forget. But we'll be hoping on the 17th to see one or maybe two examples from each of the sites. So it gives you a lot of time to think about it. Our next session in 2 weeks, which I will conduct, will focus on speaking opinion. So spoken opinion and venues for doing that. And again, you'll bring some examples of that on March 3rd. So once again, you have, is it 2nd? Okay, I got all these dates wrong. And is the last one March 9th? Okay, that was my mistake. All right, so then same thing. You have more than a month in order to bring an example. And then the final session I will do is February 3rd and on March 9th. Is it 16th? Okay, I'm wrong again. Let's correct that. Okay, is that correct now? Yeah, don't want to confuse anybody. Okay, good. So that's just to let you know you have a long period of time. We're checking the dates anyway. Whatever the dates in the schedule are correct. Don't worry about this. Okay? Alrighty, so back to the PowerPoint, please. So now we're looking at today. And today's focus is on writing of personal opinion. So as we'll see, we're going to look at some samples of writing. And we're going to think about different kinds of expression of opinion in different places where your opinion might be expressed and where, or your student's opinion might be expressed. We're going to be talking a little bit about how do we choose topics that are worth writing about. We can have opinions on all kinds of things. We can have opinions about our favorite rock star. We can have opinions about art. We can have opinions about food. There's many things that we have opinions about. But when do we choose to actually write about them? And what kinds of topics do we encourage our students to write about? So this is something we'll consider. One very common medium is newspaper, which is, it's oftentimes called the op-ed page, which is opinion and editorial. This is typically where the editor of the newspaper gets to have their opinion, and they get to write about it. All newspapers have a perspective. Some articles are more neutral than others, but most of the time there'll be some articles in the paper where there's an opinion, an editorial stated. The opinion is oftentimes a countering perspective. So if the newspaper has one kind of opinion from the editor, the opinion part is somebody can say something that's different. And again, it can be their own personal idea. So this is a very common place where we find opinions stated. Oftentimes in letters to the editor, or sometimes it's called the post. I think at the Bangkok Post it's called postbox. Yeah. We're going to look at another kind of opinion, which is more of kind of a personal statement, which I believe you've encountered already with Ajahn Shea in other sessions. And we're going to work with a process for writing that you can use with your students. Actually, we're going to look at two different processes. And also look at how do we assess this kind of writing. Assessment is one of our big challenges as teachers when it comes to writing. Probably one of the biggest challenges is how do you determine what kind of a mark to give somebody for writing. All right. So as is oftentimes the case when we're working together, we're going to be doing quite a bit of work with a partner or groups of 3. So right now you might want to look around and see who your partner might be. Yes, if you're sitting here, you can just turn around. So let's start with a question, and I'm just going to ask you to chat with your partners for a minute. Look at that first question there. What makes an opinion powerful in writing? So when you read something that somebody has written, what makes you convinced that they have a good point? So just chat a minute with your partners, and then we'll take a comment or 2 from each of the sites. Go ahead.
ค่ะก่อนที่อาจารย์จะทำกิจกรรมนะคะก็อยากจะพูดถึง overview ที่อาจารย์มาที่ได้พูดไปนะคะว่าสำหรับในตอนนี้นะคะอาจารย์จะพูดถึงการนำเสนอความคิดเห็นส่วนตัวนะคะแล้วก็การเลือกนะคะที่จะเลือกหัวข้อเรื่องมาที่จะมาแสดงความคิดเห็นนะคะแล้วก็อาจารย์ก็พูดถึงในคอลัมน์ในหนังสือพิมพ์นะคะซึ่งเราก็เป็นที่รู้จักนะคะเป็นความคิดเห็นของบรรณาธิการหรือว่าความคิดเห็นของผู้อ่านนะคะแล้วก็อาจารย์จะแนะนำถึงโครงร่างนะคะการที่จะขั้นตอนการเขียนนะคะการเขียนการแสดงความคิดเห็นความเรียงการแสดงความคิดเห็นแล้วก็วิธีการประเมินผลนะคะการเขียนซึ่งนี่จะเป็นประโยชน์มากๆเลยนะคะเพราะทักษะการเขียนเนี่ยไม่ง่ายเลยนะคะทั้งสำหรับคุณครูแล้วก็สำหรับนักเรียนนะคะสำหรับหัวข้อของกิจกรรมนะคะอาจารย์ให้คุยกับท่านอาจารย์ข้างๆนะคะว่าอะไรที่ทำให้ความคิดเห็นนั้นเนี่ยเรารู้สึกว่าเราคล้อยตามความคิดเห็นที่เราอ่านหรือเราฟังนะคะ What makes it convincing ค่ะนะคะอาจารย์ลองคุยกับเพื่อนๆนะคะอะไรที่ทำให้ความคิดเห็นที่เราได้ยินหรือว่าความคิดเห็นที่เราอ่านเนี่ยนะคะที่มีคนเขียนเนี่ยเรารู้สึกคล้อยตามไปสิ่งที่อยู่ในนั้นเนี่ยอะไรที่ทำให้เรารู้สึกคล้อยตามค่ะ
Okay. We have a lot to cover. I just wanted to make a procedural announcement that everybody will hear. Because we are so fortunate to have 4 sites working together, I think it's probably better if I ask for feedback from 2 sites each time. So we'll keep rotating so that otherwise it might be procedurally challenging. So for this time, we'll hear from Bangkok and Hua Hin. Next time, we'll hear from Hua Hin and Chiang Mai. Then after that, Chiang Mai and Korat. After that, Korat, Bangkok, etc. We'll just follow that process, okay? So then you'll know if you're going to be expected to speak. So anybody can share from Bangkok, please. What makes you convinced when you read somebody's writing? Anybody would like to share what you talked about? Yes, please. I see somebody pointing. Yes, why not? I know you're brave. Thank you. What helps you to be convinced?
Okay. Sorry to trouble you again with my English. Okay. As we have discussed in my group with my team over here, we think the topic, we have to set the topic with the keyword that related to things like mean community affairs or disaster like flooding.
So if the topic is important or relevant, then you're more likely to be convinced or interested. Okay. Can you switch off your mic now? Thank you. How about somebody from Hua Hin? What makes you convinced? Can anybody share from that site? Yes.
Okay, we have some ideas from Ajahn Jintana. Okay.
Good morning.
Hi.
In our group, we have some more opinions about the writing. The first one, we have to give more example of in the reading, in the writing. Next, we can use the different vocabularies. And the last one, use the different titles to make it attractive or interesting. Thank you.
Okay, great. Those are three really excellent ideas. I think the idea of offering examples of what you're trying to talk about is important, and also we will be talking today about convincing vocabulary. How do we choose words that kind of capture people's attention, make them feel convinced? So we'll be looking at choosing convincing vocabulary. And then you talked about using titles, which is interesting. It's true that when I'm reading an article, if I look through, it's the title that's going to draw me in. So yes, we can absolutely think about how we're going to title things. I feel that newspapers oftentimes use titles. When you read the newspaper and you see like what the headline is, what the title is, you already become either interested or convinced, or maybe you don't like it. But they pick things to get you to have a particular reaction or some kind of a feeling. All right, we're going to look at an example. I apologize to the sites outside of Bangkok because I'm not sure you got the new copy. In the packet, it looked like this, which is, it's called Already Overcharged, but in the copy, the little side part on the right was cut off. So in Bangkok, we have an improved copy. Everywhere else, I think you have this one, which I believe you can see. So if you can put an improved copy up on the screen, that would be wonderful. This article, this is a letter to the Bangkok post box. And it, I believe, was in the newspaper 2 days ago. So this is very current. Somebody who chose not to write their name, they signed themselves in the dark. So there's kind of a comment made already there. And the topic is called Overcharged, Already Overcharged. It's about electricity in Thailand. So with your group, your small group, you can work with the same people again. Have a look at this article. Maybe skim it. Remember in previous sessions we talked about skimming. That's where you don't read every single word. You just read quickly to try to understand the idea. Then talk with your group. Did the person who wrote this letter in the dark, do they make a convincing argument or not so much? And please think about why. All right, so after I give you about 4 or 5 minutes to talk with your group, we'll then start with Hua Hin and then Chiang Mai to hear some commentary from those groups. But go ahead, turn to your group and look at this letter. See what you think.
ค่ะจากอันนี้เป็นบทความนะคะจาก Bangkok Post นะคะชื่อ already overcharged นะคะอาจารย์ลองอ่านดูนะคะแล้วก็คิดยังไงนะคะว่ามัน convincing ไหมนะคะมันเป็นเรื่องที่เราอ่านแล้วเราคล้อยตามไหมนะคะแล้วมีอะไรในนั้นที่ทำให้เราคิดว่าเราคล้อยตามนะคะเห็นด้วยหรือไม่เห็นด้วยค่ะ
Let's start in Hua Hin, please. Can somebody give us a perspective on why you think this is a good letter, why it's maybe not so good? You can say that some points are good, some not so good, but let's hear from Hua Hin first. Oh, little microphone action over there. Oh, don't strangle her with the mic.
Okay. We just had a little bit of time to discuss this, but the main point that people in my group made is that there's one example here. There's only one neighborhood that he's talking about in the article. So we don't know if it's true all over or if it's only true in one particular area. So the examples are limited. That's the issue.
Yeah, great. Yeah, very good point. Very good point. So we might be convinced for this one location, but are we convinced that it's a problem, a wider spread problem? Yeah, very good point. How about Chiang Mai? It's your turn to offer any thoughts.
For Chiang Mai, we say that it's a good letter because of they give us the examples and also facts and have a description of poor service and also the problem. And also the author has a personal experience of the situation. The problem is stated and also solutions are given several times. Finally, it's breakdown of possible causes, and for the conclusion is there are strong concluding statements. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. That was quite a comprehensive analysis. You brought up a lot of different points, but I wanted to just highlight a couple of them. One, you ended by talking about the conclusion. And it's true that in any kind of persuasive writing, when we're trying to talk about an opinion, convince somebody to agree with us, it's important to end with what we say, we end with a bang. End with something definitive, precise, an idea. It can also be powerful to end with a strong question. But I think to come to some kind of conclusion is important. You also pointed out that the author of this letter used some facts. So if we're trying to persuade somebody to believe like us, we can't just say, here's what I think. Why don't you just agree with me? It is important to have something factual, something that we can say, yes, I read about this, I did some research, I found out about this, and therefore, this is what I think. So thank you very much for that. We're going to go moving along now. I've got to find my other device here. Okay. Oopsie. I hopped too much. All right, I don't know if you heard about this event that happened in the United States in August. Perhaps you did. I see people here in Bangkok are nodding. We're kind of focusing for a little while now on the theme of flooding because it's very much a part of our thinking here in Thailand. It certainly has been a big part of the news, commentary. It's been part of the political scene, part of the humanitarian scene, which is flooding. But I thought I'd start with the example from the United States and then move to the example of Thailand. And of course, we know that it isn't over. The flooding might have stopped for Bangkok, but now it's a very current event in the south of Thailand now. So Thailand has had too much water this year. In August, in the United States, in Vermont, we had too much water, and it came with Hurricane Irene. And what's interesting is that it caused enormous flooding in Vermont, which maybe you realize is my home state. It's where I live when I am not in Thailand. And part of what was devastating for this hurricane in Vermont is because it's unusual. Vermont is not on the coast. So usually it's coastal places that become flooded with a hurricane. But what happened is the wind and the weather blew the rain inland, and Vermont is very mountainous, hilly, and there's lots of streams, water. And so as it blew and it rained, it caused this deluge in lower lying areas. Whole cities, whole towns were flooded away. Not for a different reason than Thailand, but not unsimilar. So it was a very upsetting time. And even though it was predicted and everybody knew it was coming, it still took people by surprise because it was very difficult to prepare for it. So you have in your packet something called Hurricane Irene Guilt. Can you find that article? Hurricane Irene Guilt. It's got two sides. We're not survivor's guilt. We're not going to read the whole article, but you have the entire one to look at if you wish. We're just going to read the first, let's say, 2 paragraphs, 3, about through into the middle of that page is all we're going to read. Let me just give you a little bit about this article. This appeared in the local newspaper, and it was an op-ed statement. So this was an opinion. This is not considered a factual news story. It's an opinion. Written by a woman named Joyce Marcel, who is a writer. Nope, it's not that one. It's the one called Irene Guilt, Survival Guilt. She is a writer who lives in Vermont, and she writes frequently in the newspaper. I'd like you now to read and turn to your small group again, just like the first half of the first page. And I want you to look for, there's one phrase, one small phrase that she repeats 3 times. And I want you to talk to your partners about why you think, why does she use this one phrase 3 times? And what do you think she is going to say in her opinion? Okay? So just read half, talk to your partners, and then we're going to start this time in Chiang Mai and then go to Korat for some commentary. Okay, go ahead with your partners.
ก็เช่นกันนะคะสำหรับกิจกรรมนี้นะคะอาจารย์อ่านเรื่องบทความนะคะที่คนผู้อ่านเขียนมาแสดงความคิดเห็นนะคะลงหนังสือนะคะอันนี้ลงที่เว็บไซต์นะคะ Hurricane Irene นะคะอาจารย์ก็อ่านแล้วก็ลองดูซิว่าเรื่องนี้นะคะผู้เขียนเนี่ย Joyce Marcel เนี่ยนะคะเขาแสดงความคิดเห็นแล้วก็น่าเห็นคล้อยตามไหมและอะไรในนั้นที่ทำให้เรารู้สึกว่าเป็นภาษาที่เขาใช้ว่าทำให้เรารู้สึกคล้อยตามนะคะค่ะ
Okay, hopefully you can start talking with your partners now. Find the phrase that she repeats and discuss how you think that makes her comment stronger. Okay, I know you haven't had a long time to discuss, but we have a lot to do this morning. So we're going to start in Chiang Mai. What's the phrase that Joyce Marcel has used, and why? How does that help the effectiveness, or any other commentary you have on the initial part of this letter? Chiang Mai.
First of all, just her title saying survivor's guilt. You can tell by the title that she's going to talk about something that was negative, but she survived it, so she's on the positive. I think the "we are lucky" reinforces her idea that things could have been worse, but they survived. And they survived, they coped with the situation, and they made the best of things.
Yeah.
Teachers in our room mentioned the fact that she brought out a lot of points that we take so many things for granted, and then when something happens and they're gone, how do we get along?
Yeah.
How do we survive?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that summary. Yes, I hadn't even brought out the fact that the title itself already leads you in a certain direction, as you very aptly pointed out. Survivor's guilt. I saw a couple of people in Bangkok had written a translation for the word guilt. You know, it's that feeling of, oh, I got away pretty good. And as you point out as well, the things that we take for granted that are suddenly gone. So one of the examples she used, everybody who was there, including me at that time, would fill up their bathtub with water so that, because if electricity fails, water also becomes unavailable. So we all filled our bathtubs with water, so we would have water for cleaning things, etc. And she talks about how even though they have electricity, she doesn't want to waste the water because it could have been very bad So she's not going to just open the drain and let the water run out. She's still going to use that water. So very good points from Chiang Mai. Thank you. How about, we have not yet heard it all from Korat. Would somebody like to share any other perspectives on we were lucky or anything from survivor's guilt that you noticed? Maybe Ajahn Naraporn says you might not have had the handout. Is that right? I think for today, because we're not sure what Korat had in terms of materials, maybe you can let Ajahn Naraporn know. Can we come back to Bangkok then for the time being? If we find out that they have the materials, we'll go back to them again. Anybody in Bangkok, what would you like to add from from reading the first part of this article? Any other observations? Some brave soul. No, maybe I took you by surprise. Is that what happened? Okay, you'll be first again for the next one, so be prepared. Let me just say a word again, a little bit more about word choice. The word in the title, again, as our colleague in Chiang Mai pointed out, even the title has strong words in it. Survivor is a strong word, and guilt is a strong word. It makes us wonder already, what did she survive? How did she survive? How did they survive? And why does she feel bad? So the guilt already triggers this idea that if you're lucky, maybe sometimes one feels I don't deserve this luck. Or why am I lucky and this person is unlucky? How does that happen? Is it fair? Not really. Just happened that way. So that's an example of using strong language to help to convince somebody. All right, we're now going to look at a couple of pieces from the Thai flooding situation. You have two pieces. One is quite short, and it talks about worst flooding in 50 years. The other one is quite long, and it talks about flooding in the old days. What did people do in the old days? Both of these examples come from blogs. Blogs being like an online journal or series of writing. Incidentally, we're actually going to open a blog for this program, and before the time is out, hopefully you will all have contributed to that blog. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up. These blogs happen to both be written by Farang, and I don't know exactly where these men are from, but they were both written as an observation of Thailand flooding, and I found them simply by going onto the internet and Googling blog Thailand flooding to find these pieces. All right, so one is kind of a reflection on the current situation. This man is on his way. He finishes his statement saying he's on a bus. It had a picture in the blog, which I was not able to copy, of a flooded temple in Ayutthaya. So there was that image in the blog, and then his comment that he's on a bus or a train. I don't remember which right now. The other is a man reflecting. He's not Thai, but he's obviously lived here for a long time. And he's thinking about how did it used to be when there was flooding? And how is it different from today? Okay, so the same thing. I think the first article is pretty short. You can skim it quickly. The second article is quite long, so just read the very first 2 or 3 paragraphs. And again, speaking with your same partners, think about what makes these blog articles effective. What could have made them better? And then after you speak for a few minutes with your partners, we'll be taking some comments first from Bangkok, and then from Hua Hin. Okay, go ahead and get to work.
ค่ะก็มี handout นะคะที่เป็นบล็อกอยู่2เรื่องนะคะเรื่องแรกก็ Thailand's worst flooding in 50 years นะคะแล้วก็เรื่องที่2ก็ How did we deal with the floods in the old days นะคะก็ทั้ง2เรื่องนี้จะลองอ่านสัก2 paragraph แรกนะคะแล้วก็ลองดูซิว่าก็เหมือนเดิมค่ะว่าผู้เขียนเนี่ยใช้การใช้ภาษาของเขาเนี่ยอย่างไรนะถึงทำให้ดูความคิดเห็นนี้น่าติดตามนะคะแล้วก็ท่านอาจารย์จะเห็นด้วยหรือไม่เห็นด้วยยังไงนะคะค่ะใช้วิธีไหนเทคนิคไหนในการเขียนค่ะ
chat with your partners. So let's hear some talking.